Hey BookTube, it's Jackie. Welcome back. If you're new to me, welcome. My name's Jackie. I sit on my floor and talk about books. So really hope that's why you're here, because that's what's gonna happen today. If you're not new to me, welcome back. Thanks for the continued support. And today I've got my January wrap up. So if you watched any of my videos back in 2016 when I started this, you will learn that I never completed my TBR. Never once. Not once. I came close the first month. But other than that, I never completed my TBR. And this month, I did, but I didn't. And I'm going to explain that. So in total, I read 10 books. I'm super pumped about that. 10 books. But I had 8 books on my TBR. If you watch my January TBR video, which I'll link down below, I had 8 books. I didn't read all 8 of those books. So, long story short, for Christmas, my father-in-law bought me some AirPods. And I have been abusing the crap out of these things because at my job, I am allowed to have at least one earbud in as long as I keep the other ear open for customers, because we don't have a lot of foot traffic at my job. And so I have been using my AirPods and my Audible subscription like crazy. So this month I read a total of 5 physical books and listened to 5 audiobooks. The audiobooks were not on my TBR at all, except for one of them, and I'll get to that shortly. So I know there's a huge debate between, is Audible really reading a book versus sitting down and actually reading a book? I'm going to go with the fact that it is, because I still sat there for some of these books 10 hours and listened to people talk to me through these books. And I know the stories and I remember what happened. So I'm going to go with the fact that it's considered reading. I'm utilizing the time that I have and I'm multitasking. Now, I do acknowledge the fact that you can't really use Audible for all types of books. And I learned that this month. But we'll get to that. We're going to start with the books that I didn't actually even get to. I never touched, I never got to, all that jazz, however you want to phrase it. And those two are Beth Harbison's When in Doubt, Add Butter, and Emma Thoralt's Rebel Rose. Out of the two of these, I'm most disappointed about this one because I really want to see what this series is about. As I said in my previous video, that it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it takes the story of Beauty and the Beast where it ends and picks up where it ends, but puts it in actual historical context, which I think is a really cool aspect of that, kind of showing you, there isn't always a happy ending, because guess what? Life goes on. It's really neat. So I'm really bummed that I didn't get to this one, so hopefully I can get this on another TBR later on in the year. As for this one, I know I'm going to love this book as soon as I ever pick it up, because I love Beth Harbison's work. She reads really, really fast. And this was one of my options for the Buzzword Challenge that I'm partaking in. But I did complete that challenge with my other book because I put 2 books on my TBR that could meet that challenge. So I still met my challenge. This was just kind of a freebie because I really thought I could get to it, and I couldn't. So those are the 2 books I did not even touch. I did, however, start A Touch of Ruin by Scarlett St. Clair. I'm still reading it. As you can see, I'm this way through, and I'm loving it. I know there's a lot of hate for this series because people think it's just over the top. Hades and Persephone retelling. A Touch of Darkness is the first book in this series. I devoured it. I loved every single second of it, and this one, I am loving every single second of it, but for a different reason. There is a companion series to this. It is, I guess, the Game of series, you could say. It is Hades' perspective of each of these books. So Touch of Darkness was Persephone's view, and then you had A Game of Fate, which was Hades' view of the same instances in A Touch of Darkness. And I preferred Hades' book so much more to Persephone's book. And this one, knowing that there's a companion in Hades' perspective, I am loving the instances. I can only imagine what Hades' reaction is in some of these scenarios that I've come across, because I just feel like I'm going to laugh my ass off when I read that one. But it doesn't come out until this year, so I'm really pumped when that one comes out, that I will already have this one ready so I can just go right into it. But I know I'm going to finish this really, really quickly because I literally started this last night and I'm already this much through it. And I've only really been reading for like an hour today on this book. So really excited. It reads really fast and I love Scarlett St. Clair's writing. I love this series. It's up there. And just so you know, my husband bought me the rest of this series that is currently out. So he's really pumped that I'm liking it and then I'm reading it. So those are all the books that I didn't get to or I just had started. So let's get to the books that I did complete. And I'm going to go with the audiobooks first. The first audiobook I listened to was actually Eliza Schlesinger's. I can't fucking say her last name. And there's literally a whole chapter about how people can't say her name in this book. But I listened to this on Audible, which she actually narrates it herself. Highly recommend getting the Audible version of this book. I don't think it would have the same sticking power or the same comedic value if you just read it. Would it be fantastic? Yes. Would it be 5 stars? Probably not. But I gave it a 5-star because Eliza Schlesinger narrated it and she made me laugh my ass off during her narration. And it was fantastic. It was glorious. I laughed so much, and the foreword by Mayim Bialik is also fantastic. It is a autobiography, but it's also a lot of philosophy behind being a female in general and just how it is going, some of the craziness that females go through, but at the same time, it all makes complete and total sense that we have to go through it because of the situations we're put in our world, in our time, and in our time frame. So being a women's history major and a gender and women's studies minor, this book really hit home for me. It felt like I was back in a GWS class, just a funnier one. And I really, really enjoyed this experience. This was the first Audible book I completed of this year, so it was a really great start to this year. Really fantastic. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars on the Audible version. If I just read it primarily with a book, I probably would only give it 4 stars. Because I had such a good experience with a comic Audible book, I decided to go with a second one, and that is Laura Clary's Idiot. Laura Clary is a fellow YouTuber. She does so much fucking content. It's crazy. Helen Smash is one of her biggest things. She does the filter with the square, and then she says really bad pickup lines to her husband, and he just gives these facial reactions of like, why the fuck did I marry you? And it's hilarious. It's so freaking funny. And she does these little workout videos, Pamela Pumpkin, and it's just, oh God, she's hilarious. I love her. And so when I found out she had a book, I definitely wanted to pick it up. And then I found out that there was an audiobook of it. I was like, hell yes. And she narrates it herself, which makes it even better because she does her voices and it feels like I was watching a YouTube video. This felt like I was watching her stand up. Like, these kind of books are comedians' way to go. Audibles, especially if they're narrating themselves. It feels like I was having a conversation with them and they were just telling me their life story. And I was just sitting there for along for the ride and we're just having a coffee. It was great. I loved every single second of it. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars as well. Again, 5 out of 5 stars for the audio. I cannot talk today. The audio version of this book. Again, I don't think it would have still been fantastic, but I don't think it would have that same appeal and that same draw if I just sat down and actually read it. Now, however, this is uber short, so it would take nothing for you to read it. And I think you'd probably still laugh, but I just don't think you'd laugh as hard. I had such a positive experience with both of those books. I decided to go all in and finally listen to the Audible book that I had been wanting to listen to for a while. When I got Audible, I put this book on my wish list and I just kind of waited. And I said, finally, it's time. I'm going to do it. And that is Motley Crue's The Dirt. Now, Motley Crue did not narrate this. They wrote the book, but they didn't narrate it, which kind of sucked. Not gonna lie, kind of sucked. So it got a 4-star on the Audible version because they didn't actually narrate themselves, but they wrote the book. Now, however, this book, I really wish I would have owned the actual physical copy of said book when I was listening to it, because there's pictures that go along with their insane shenanigans. I mean, some of these things are just crazy. I've got one of, where is it? Yeah, the bathtub one. Like, they do a whole bit about this photo. And it would have been really nice to actually, like, be looking at these photos when they were talking about them. And I didn't realize there was actually pictures in the book when they were talking about, when they were going through it. So I kind of missed out on that. But now that I have it, I can go back and listen to it again and follow along the book if I ever want to. But this was, I don't want to say it was hilarious. It was very eye-opening. It was very shocking. I know Motley Crue did crazy up shit, but I did not realize how crazy and fucked up it really was. And the Netflix adaptation of this does not do a damn bit of justice at all. It doesn't do it any justice at all. But if you really want a entertaining, just crazy fucking ride of an Audible book, pick this one up. It's fantastic, and I guarantee you, even if you just read it, it would be fantastic. But I did just give it a 4-star because I really wish they would have narrated the book the fucking selves. I think it'd been so much cooler had Nikki Sixx, Tommy Lee, Mick Mars, and Vince Neil actually narrated their own book instead of having guys that kind of sort of sounded like them. So, but the narrators they did do a good job. It wasn't the same effect, if you get what I mean. But I definitely enjoyed this one. This took me a little bit longer to get through than the other two, because I believe it was like a 10-hour, 12-hour listen. But it was definitely worth it. I was definitely entertained at work. The next book I do not have a physical copy of with me, because I couldn't find a copy of it. When I went to Barnes & Noble, they didn't have one, and I didn't want to wait to order one, and they didn't have it at Book Outlet. So eventually I will get a copy of this just so I can put it on my shelf, because I'd like to have a shelf of all my Audible books. To say, like, yeah, I did read it. I did read it. I didn't physically read the physical copy, but I listened to the Audible book, and I just like to have it to show, or if there's something I ever want to reference, or maybe if I actually ever want to sit down and reread it. So eventually I will get a copy of this book, but that is Nikki Sixx's The Heroine Diaries. I had such a good experience with the Didnt that I went and got his story, and let me tell you, holy crap. Everything he mentioned in The Heroine Diaries, he mentions in The Didnt as well. But The Heroine Diaries goes in like nth detail, because these are actually the diaries he kept in 1987 when he was at his worst and he OD'd and died in December. This is the diary he kept. And some of the shit he says, holy crap, puts him in a whole different light. I mean, I knew he was a badass and he was a crazy ass, I knew it, but I didn't really know until I listened to this book. And he narrates that book himself. And it is so eye-opening. It is so crazy. If you ever think about doing heroin, you should probably read this book, and you won't want to do heroin. Ever. Like, you won't want to do any drugs. Ever. Like, Dare should be issuing this book because of just the stuff that you hear that he did, and he just did not give a about. He just didn't care because he was so big on chasing the dragon and going out and searching for the next high, and he just did not care about his life at all. And it's so sad because he's super, super talented. I mean, he's crazy talented. He wrote most of Motley Crue's songs, and he's wrote a bunch of #1 hits, best-selling author, like, you know, and he's also the cutest one in the group. So I'm a Nikki Sixx fan. That's all I gotta say. So it made me feel really bad for him listening to the book, because he's sitting there like hating his life and feeling he's worthless. I'm like, dude, are you serious? Like, you're the genius of Motley Crue. I don't know what that says about you, but you're the genius of Motley Crue. Like, they wouldn't be where they were without him. So it was a really eye-opening experience to listen to that book. I highly recommend that one. I gave that one a 5. Yeah, I gave that a 5-star on Goodreads because I really, really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend the audiobook of it. as well. And I plan on getting his 21 Years book. It's another book that he's recently written about him up to when he got into Motley Crue. So it's all about his childhood. So really, really enjoyed that one a lot. Now, for my last Audible book that I listened to this month, I loved everything I listened to. I did. I loved it. But there's one that takes the freaking cake. And that is Clanlands by Sam Hugan and Graham McTavish. This book is so fucking funny. Oh my God. These two, they narrate the book. And they are literally just bickering at each other like an old married couple. And it's the greatest thing ever. It's so good. Oh, it was glorious. Sam lives to torment Graham McTavish because he's like a diva, legit. He even declares it. He's like, I need my latte. I don't do stunts. I don't want to get hurt. I've been in this business longer. I've been hurt. It's just crazy. And then you have Sam over here who's like, I'm going to go lift this 200-pound stone because why? I fucking can. I'm Sam Human. Like, it's just fucking funny. And it's great. It's great. The banter, the bickering, the sights that they see is fantastic, but they do take the comedy out when it is needed. And you get a really great sense of patriotism for the country and a rich sense of history for Scotland. Like, you can close your eyes and you can picture what they're talking about. And it's a really fucking great book. So much so that I plan on this month listening to Clanland's Almanac, which is the second book that they went. So it's like the sequel to this, but it's like on steroids from what they say. And the Men in Kilts show is based off of the adventures in this book. So I really want to check that out if I can get it. We have enough TV services. Hopefully I can find it somewhere. But yes, this by far favorite Audible book of the entire month. This thing was freaking hilarious. I recommend it to anybody. I've ranted about it to my husband. I told him he needs to tell his friends who's a whiskey connoisseur because they talk a lot about whiskey. A lot of alcohol. Like, I felt like I was drunk at times. There was so much alcohol in this book. But God, it's so fucking funny. It is fucking funny and hilarious and educational and enjoyable. And there's Scottish accents being talked in your ear for 10 hours or however long this book was. So, I mean, can you really go wrong with that? You can't. You can't. So, Clanlands, by far my favorite Audible book of the month. Very happy that I listened to that one. And I gave it 5 stars. I give it probably 5 stars without the Audible because I feel like it would be just as funny, but you lose the sense of the bicker. You gotta listen to the bickering. It's just, it's so great. Loved it. But those are all the Audible books I listened to this month. And the physical books I got to read were just as great. The first physical book I finished and completed was Lori Wick's Where the Wild Rose Blooms. This was a reread for me. First time I read this was a freshman year in high school. We were assigned to read a book over Christmas break. I remember going down the library and working in the library during my study halls. I knew where all the books were. So I was just kind of chilling and waiting to see what other people picked. And the book I originally wanted got picked. I went to a very small high school, so we have a very small library, like 1 copy of each book. So I was like, damn it. So I tried to get through interlibrary loan and I couldn't get it. So I had to pick something else. And so I picked this one and I was not let down when I picked it. I started reading it a little after Christmas. I remember the Christmas tree was in the corner. I was sitting in our gray rocking chair that we had and I did not move until it was done. I cried. I was angry and I was super gloating because the lead character's name is Jackie and this is the first book I've ever read where the lead character's name is Jackie. And I was super pumped about it and I did not move until it was done. And I loved every single second of it. And I remembered then that I wanted to continue with the series, but I couldn't get the rest of the books through interlibrary loan. And then I discovered other books and it just kind of fell by the wayside. So 20 years later, because I was 14 when I read it, 20 years later, I'm 34 and I still feel the same way about the book, except instead of crying and having that, pain of not knowing what's going to happen, I know what's going to happen. So I have this like I don't want to read this right now because I know what's going to happen. It fucking sucks. But it still had its happy ending. The ending didn't change, thank God. And I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it a 5-star as well because it still stuck with me. It resonated from freshman year in high school. I never stopped thinking about this book. When I bought it a few years for my birthday, I couldn't remember the title, but I remember the story. So I was sitting there trying to figure out what the title was, and I found it, and I immediately bought it for my birthday a few years ago. And I'm really glad that I did. And I actually just recently purchased the rest of the series. If you watch my January book haul, you'll see that. And I plan on continuing and finishing it this series. I plan on making this one of the series I want to complete in 2022. So, Lori Wicks, Where the Wild Rose Blooms, 5 stars. It was 5 stars of freshman high school, 5 stars 20 years later. The next book I read was another reread for me again. I promise this is the last reread that I have. Was Diana Gabaldon's Outlander. And of course I gave this 5 stars because this is my favorite book of all time. I love this story. I love Jamie. I love Claire. Love Jamie more. Let's just be honest. And I just fucking love this book. And apparently I didn't remember how it ended. I was confusing Dragonfly and Amber's beginning with this ending. So when it ended, I was like, I don't remember this ending this way, but it did. And then I had to really sit down and think about it. I'm like, oh, that's because that's the beginning of the next book. So next month when I go to reread the next one, I have to really prepare myself for the devastation that's about to happen because I was prepared for the devastation of it doing it to me in this book. I was prepared. And it didn't happen. So it's like it's like an execution. Like I'm seeing the chair and I have to walk down the lane or the long walk, wherever they call that thing. Should ask my husband that. He works in a prison. And know that it's coming. I know that I'm going to be just obliterated, but I can do this because I fucking love this book. I love this story so much. Jamie and Claire. Claire is in 1945-ish, World War II time. Yeah, World War II. And she goes back to Scotland during the Jacobite Risings, and she's forced to marry Jamie. Not that she really was complaining much, let's just be honest, okay? She had like one argument about it. Really? And then they fall madly in love, and the sex scenes are great. He's super protective of her, and he's just the king of men. He is. Jamie Fraser's just the king of men. They got it right when they nicknamed him that in the show, which I have not watched. I've only seen excerpts of it on YouTube. But I really definitely enjoyed it. 5 out of 5 stars. Go check this one out. If you've not read it, you really need to because you are totally missing out. Immensely. The next book I completed was The Darkest of Elizabeth Frankenstein. I liked it. I gave it a 3-star. It wasn't my favorite of the month, but it wasn't the worst I read this month. I've read Kirsten White's work before, and she does this gender swap, which is a really interesting concept. It's very obvious that she's doing it. And since she's literally retelling the story of Dr. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, you know what happens. Like, it's not really surprise factor there. There was one twist that I didn't see coming, and I was slightly, taken aback by that. But she left this where I guess she could make another book. Carry on with the story, I guess. So that was pretty cool. This is my book club book of the month from Shayla's pick. So we'll be talking about it on Friday when I meet with them. So I'll have more to discuss about then. So I might do actually a review of it. So I'm not going to go into full stuff right now because I want to get their opinions on what they thought, because I do value their opinions and sometimes they made me think about things I didn't quite think about. So, and the next book. So this book. This was my TBR Jar Challenge book, which was to read a book primarily set at sea or a ship. And I chose Patrick O'Brian's Master and Commander, the first book in a 22-book series. I gave this book 1 star because it was a chore. I had to literally force myself to read this book. Not because it wasn't good, Not because it wasn't interesting. It's just because the way the guy writes. All right? He was talking about one thing, and he jumped to another thing, and he jumped to another thing, and he jumped to another thing. And I understand, I'm not a sailor. I grew up with a sailor. My dad's in the Navy. I know a little bit about ships, but I don't know everything about ships. I understood that there was stuff that I had to research, so I was cool with that, looking up the sails and understanding kind of the trigonometry that they use. I was cool with understanding all of that. Understood there was a level of stuff I was not going to comprehend unless I want to do further research. Fine. What I'm not fine with is you talking about a guy fucking a goat and then talking about boarding a ship to take its plunder. You're not fucking pirates. Literally, it was in the same chapter, and it was just a blip. Like, it felt like a diary without the diary entries. And I'm cool with diary entries. Just make fucking diary entries, not random excerpts. And it wasn't my cup of tea. It definitely will appeal to a different audience than me. It's not for me. So unless I am forced to, or I draw another challenge that pertains to this series, I probably will not be continuing on this series. And I'm really upset to say that because I really wanted to like this book, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. His writing style wasn't mine. I don't know if I'm not smart enough to understand his writing style, or I just am a different mindset, but it just wasn't for me. So it was a 1-star for me, but it definitely could be a 5-star for somebody else. So if you are all interested, go check it out, give it a try, because there are parts of it that are hilarious. And then there's parts of it where I honestly don't remember what happened. The last time I sat and read it, I sat and read it for an hour. And in that hour, I could not tell you right after I put the book down. I couldn't tell my husband what happened in it because I had no idea. I was just reading words. They weren't forming images in my head anymore. And I just wasn't for me. So my TBR jar challenge for January was a bust. So I will be unhauling this book and giving it to my dad because he wants to read the series and he'll probably love it. The last book I completed was Persuasion by Jane Austen. Now, I did not physically read this book. I did listen to it on Audible, and that was a mistake. I feel like I would have liked this book a lot more if I actually physically sat down and read it and not listened to the Audible version of it, just because it's a very slow burn book. Like, it is slow, but the end is fantastic. It was great at the end. I was all in it. I was there, loved it at the end, but it took a while to get there. So I feel like if I had actually sat down and physically read it, I would have enjoyed some of the nuances and her satire a lot more than what I got from the Audible book, for sure. So I think from now on, my classic book, I will have to sit down and physically read. I can't listen to an Audible of it. And to be perfectly honest, I've listened to Audible books of actual fiction stories. I had a more positive experience with Audible with the biographies, the autobiographies, the commentary, the books that I read this month on Audible than I had with actual fiction stories. So I think I'm just going to keep it that way unless I really need the Audible book. Right, that's the only version I can get of that book. Or unless maybe I'm in a car. But the way I'm using Audible, I think the biographies and these style books are going to be much more appropriate for it. But other than that, I did complete my classics challenge and it was not bad. I gave it a 3-star, but it's Jane Austen's Persuasion. I mean, can you really rate this book? It's considered one of her best works. It's her last work, and it's considered one of her best works ever. It's taught in schools still to this day. Is my rating really going to matter? No. It's fucking Jane Austen, okay? So I read Jane Austen. I finally read a Jane Austen book, and I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. So maybe this just wasn't the Jane Austen for me. Maybe Emma will be, or maybe Mansfield Park, or Northanger Abbey. I don't know, but I'm going to read them sometime this year. So those are all the books I read this month. 10 books. Holy crap. That's amazing. I'm so proud of myself. So now it's that time where I get to draw my TBR jar book for next month so I can actually set up my TBR and finish this setting it up. So here it goes. I got my little poisoned apple cup here. We're going to go for it. Let's see what I get. There we go. Bum, ba, bum, bum, bum. Reread a favorite book. Well, I just did that twice this month, so okay. All right. I've got a couple books on there that are favorites that I read back in high school. We'll see if they still hold up. I've still got a few of those. I think I got a good idea for this one. Now, because I set my TBR just kind of what I'm feeling at the time and how I feel, I wanted to kind of challenge myself one more time. I did not get to 2 books on a TBR that I personally set. It wasn't drawn for me. It wasn't on a TBR game. I chose these and I still didn't get to them. So I wanted to do something to kind of prevent me from doing that or making my TBR so crazy that I couldn't handle it. You know, I tend to bite off a lot more than I can chew. And so this is kind of, hey, hold it back a little bit. So I talked to my husband and he agreed to help me out with this. He has come up with his own challenges and I have to draw one for every book I don't complete on my TBR. Even if I overread my TBR, I still have to draw them. So I'll be drawing 2 of these and adding those to my next month's TBR. Now, the catch is I know everything that's in this because I wrote them. I have zero idea what's in here and he's continuously adding them as we go. And they're not being taken out of the jar once they're read. They're going to be put back in there. So I could get the same prompts multiple times. We don't know. But yeah, he put a few in there right now just to get us through this month. So this ought to be really fun. I don't know what they say or anything. So I'm going to grab 2. That's 2. So here it goes. And this is his Black Rifle coffee mug. He's let me using it for this challenge. So first one. Read your husband's favorite book from high school. So I'm going to have to, he's told me that, but I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. So I'll have to probably, I don't think we own that. We'll probably have to go buy that one. And read a book that is a TV show. I actually have a few of those. So this will work out just great. So those are my challenges for this month. Reread a favorite book, read my husband's favorite book from high school, and read a book from a TV show, plus my other challenges and some readathons. So this has been a long-ass video. If you're still here, give me a thumbs up emoji in the comments, thumbs up the video, subscribe, and I will see you guys all later with my February TBR. Stay safe and check out some Audible books. They're kind of fun. Bye.